There is a version of Las Vegas that only the people who built it ever fully understood. It was not the version that existed in the photographs or in the films or in the long mythology of neon and card tables and showgirls that the city eventually manufactured about itself. It was something quieter than that and more demanding. A version built on a specific hierarchy of attention, on the understood, never-stated system by which the entertainment world of that city evaluated itself and communicated its evaluations to the people who needed to know them. Frank Sinatra understood that hierarchy better than almost anyone alive. He had not merely participated in it. He had, in a very real sense, helped to construct it. Through the years at the Sands, through the Rat Pack era, through the long accumulation of performances and relationships and decisions that had made him, by the late 1960s, not simply the most famous entertainer in Las Vegas, but something closer to the standard by which the room measured everyone else. And one evening in the late 1960s, without announcing his arrival, without telling the showroom management or the press or anyone who might have arranged an occasion around it, Frank Sinatra came to watch Ann-Margret perform. He stayed for the entire show. He went backstage when it ended. He said almost nothing. And in Las Vegas, in that era, among the people who understood what that world was, that was everything. To understand why, it helps to understand what the architecture of Las Vegas entertainment actually was in those years, and what it meant for its most significant figure to move through it the way he did that night. Las Vegas in the late 1960s was not yet the sprawling resort destination it would become in later decades. It was still, in its essential character, a showroom city, a place whose identity was organized around live performance in a way that no other American city quite replicated. The major hotels competed not primarily through their gaming floors or their restaurants, but through the acts they could place in their showrooms, and the showrooms themselves were understood within the entertainment industry as the most demanding venues in the country. A performer who could hold a Las Vegas audience was a performer who had passed a test that Broadway, Hollywood, and the recording industry could not administer. Not a test of talent exactly. Talent was the minimum. A test of command, the particular unteachable quality of a person who knows they belong in a room and who makes every other person in that room feel the same certainty. Sinatra had been one of the architects of that world. His relationship with Las Vegas went back to the 1950s, to the original development of the Sands, and the particular culture that had made the Copa Room, for a few extraordinary years, the center of American entertainment. By the late 1960s, he had moved beyond that specific era, but remained what he had always been in that city, not simply a performer, but a reference point, the measure by which the room evaluated everyone else. For Ann-Margret, the late 1960s were the years in which Las Vegas became definitively her other home. She had been performing there for years, moving through the hierarchy of rooms and contracts in the way that careers in that city built themselves, through repetition and reputation, through the accumulated weight of audiences who saw her and returned, through the word that spread in the small, closed world of Las Vegas entertainment about what she was doing in those showrooms and what it felt like to be in the room when she did it. She commanded the room, she filled it, she delivered night after night performances that those who witnessed them described in the specific, careful terms reserved for things that had genuinely surprised them. But the particular quality that Sinatra carried, The sense of a performer so long in rooms like this that the room itself had reshaped itself around him was something that required not just skill, but time. She was still, in those years, accumulating the time. What Sinatra had heard through the efficient, accurate network of information that connected everyone who mattered in Las Vegas entertainment was something about the quality of what Ann-Margret was doing in her shows that interested him enough to investigate personally. Not through reports, not through the intermediaries who normally carried word through that world, but in the way he had always approached things that genuinely interested him, by going himself, without ceremony, and seeing for himself. He arrived without announcement at the showroom on an evening when Ann-Margret was performing. A table was arranged with the particular efficiency of an industry that understood what such arrivals meant and handled them accordingly. He was seated. The lights went down. The show began. Ann-Margret did not know he was there, at least not initially. She performed the way she always performed, at full commitment, without reservation, giving the show everything it required and then something more. The quality that distinguished her performances from performances that were merely excellent. The energy that had no name except the one audiences gave it by refusing to look away. At some point during the performance, the accounts from people who were there that evening differ on exactly when. She became aware of his presence. Not through anything said or signaled, simply through the quality of the attention coming from a particular place in the room. The specific weight of someone watching with the informed precision of a person who knows exactly what they are evaluating and cannot be satisfied by anything less than the real thing. She kept performing. There was nothing else to do, and she would not have done anything else regardless. But the awareness of being seen by someone who understood what she was doing, who could not be fooled by technique or dazzled by spectacle, that awareness did not diminish what she was doing. If anything, it clarified it. It made the performance, in those seconds after she understood who was in the room, into a kind of direct address to someone who spoke the same language. The show continued. The numbers proceeded in their order. The audience responded the way Ann-Margret's Las Vegas audiences responded, with the enthusiastic, full-hearted appreciation of people who had come specifically to see her and who were receiving exactly what they had hoped for, and then more. The showroom held what it always held in those years when she was at the peak of what those shows were, a room that understood it was witnessing something above the ordinary. When it ended, Sinatra came backstage. In the ordinary flow of a Las Vegas showroom evening, this would have been the occasion for a particular kind of performance. The post-show congratulation, the gracious public acknowledgement of a colleague's work, the warmly worded assessment delivered with the precision of someone who had given thousands of such assessments and knew exactly how to make them land. He was accomplished at this. He had been performing it for decades. It was one of the skills of a man who had navigated the entertainment industry at the highest level for as long as he had. But what he did that evening in the backstage of that showroom was different. He said almost nothing. Not nothing, he spoke. But what he said was brief and specific and delivered without the social warmth coating that made compliments easy to receive and equally easy to discount afterward. It was the kind of thing a person says when they have seen something they were not entirely expecting and are still in the process of accounting for it. Not praise in the ordinary sense, something more considered than that. The response of someone who has evaluated a thing carefully and arrived at a conclusion that the usual social language of the industry is not quite adequate to express. Ann-Margret, who had spent years learning to read what was actually happening beneath the surface of industry interactions, understood what she had received. Not primarily the words, the fact of him being there at all. The fact of him staying for the whole show when he could have left at any point, and no one would have thought less of him for it. The fact of him coming backstage afterward, into the working reality of the show, rather than waiting for her to come out into the public space where such encounters were easier to manage. The fact of what he didn't say as much as what he did. In Las Vegas, in that era, approval was rarely explicit. The hierarchy communicated in a specific language, through presence, through attention, through the precise ways in which the people who mattered in that world chose to spend their time. Frank Sinatra had spent his evening in Ann-Margret's showroom, not his own. He had stayed until the end. He had come backstage. He had said, briefly and specifically, something he did not say as a matter of routine. That was the approval. Not the words, the staying, the coming backstage. The particular quality of what little he said, which was different from what he would have said if the performance had been merely good. In the years that followed, Ann-Margret's place in Las Vegas continued to grow into exactly the kind of command she had been building toward. The kind that does not announce itself, but that audiences feel from the moment the lights change. That creates in a room the specific quality of collective certainty that a performer at that level generates. Those who watched her career in those years would point to various moments as evidences of what had shifted. New contracts, new venues, reviews that described something in her performances that the earlier reviews had not quite named. But the people who had been in that showroom the night Frank Sinatra came to watch, who knew what his presence meant, who understood the language of attention in that world well enough to read what it signified, tended to remember it as something else. Not a turning point, a confirmation. The moment when the standard that everyone in that world was quietly measured against looked at what she was building and, in its brief, specific, unhurried way, acknowledged that she was building it correctly. Frank Sinatra walked into Ann-Margret's Las Vegas show without telling anyone he was coming. He sat through the entire performance. He went backstage when it ended and said almost nothing, and then he left. In any other city, in any other industry, that sequence of events might have meant very little. In Las Vegas, in that era, among the people who understood what that world was and how it measured itself, it meant everything.